Chapter 4. Whispers in Dark Cloth. Threshold felt different in daylight. The night before it had been all lamplight and blurred edges, shadows doubled on damp stone. Now the streets lay bright and sharp under a clear sky, every color a little too honest. Banners fluttered from upper windows, laundry lines ran like thin bridges between buildings, and the steady pulse of the city moved around them. Carts rattling over cobbles, vendors shouting their wares, the distant ring of a smith's hammer against metal. They had time to kill. The full moon was still a few nights away, the runes on the mountain had made that much clear. For once, there was nothing to fight and nowhere they could climb yet. No crisis breathing down their necks. Just a city, a waiting mountain, and hours to fill. They stepped out into the street together from the silver switchback, the inn door swinging shut behind them with a soft thump. Priscilla walked a little ahead, her curls bouncing. The change in her was subtle, but it was there. The tips of her ears, usually hidden by hair and cloth, were bare and sharply pointed now, catching the light. Her nails had lengthened into something more claw-like, not grotesque, just too precise, too tapered to be human. And every now and then, when she forgot to tuck it away, the end of her tail, thin and sleek, shaped like a spearhead, flicked once behind her cloak before she reeled it back in. No one in the crowd spared her more than a glance. There were stranger pilgrims than her on the road to the mountain. But to Izzy and Kaylin, who knew every carefully hidden part of her, the small concessions felt like trust being laid down, one quiet piece at a time. Priscilla watched the stalls with wide, curious eyes, but when a fruit seller called out to her, she only dipped her head, muttered a soft "no thank you," and kept walking. 3 words instead of 1. Kaylin caught it, and the faint, pleased flicker in his expression was almost comically proud. "So," he said, clapping his hands together once, "before you two go buy every stitch of black leather in this city," he glanced meaningfully at Izzy, "we should find a market. That room's got a fireplace, and I'm not leaving without cooking at least one real meal." Priscilla nodded, more firmly than usual. "Food," she agreed. "We cook," pointing at herself and Kaylin. "That's my girl," Kaylin said, grinning. "Come on, I saw a butcher's street on the way in. We'll see what we can haggle before the pilgrims clean it out." Izzy glanced between them, noting the way Priscilla stayed naturally at Kaylin's side, the way his stride unconsciously slowed when she looked at something, giving her time. That bond was its own slow burn, different from hers and Sirius's, but growing all the same. "All right," Izzy said. "You two handle making us something that isn't in stew. Sirius and I will deal with looking like we haven't fought our way through half a forest and a bloody war." Kaylin snorted. "Don't let her put you in anything with buckles you can't get out of by yourself." Priscilla's lips quirked. "Leather," she said softly, clearly amused. Izzy pressed a hand to her chest in mock offense. "I am deeply responsible with my fashion choices. Now go. Bring back something we can't pronounce." They split at the next corner. Kaylin and Priscilla veering off toward the lower market where the air already smelled of meat and spices, Sirius and Izzy angling uphill, toward streets where the shops upgraded from stalls to real glass-fronted windows. The higher they climbed, the more the city's accent changed. Less mud on the cobbles, more slate and carved stone, shop signs painted in neat, careful script. Tailors and cobblers set their work in display, cloaks in rich dyes, boots with polished buckles, mannequins wearing outfits no sane traveler would ever put on to climb anything that wasn't a staircase. Izzy took it all in with the bright, sharp-eyed curiosity of someone who'd grown up with far less and learned to read everything. "Right," she said, stopping in front of a shop where the display held both respectable leather and something sheer and ridiculous in the back. "This one." Sirius eyed the window. "You chose the one with the least practical garments at the front." "The good stuff's always in the back," she replied. "Trust me. Besides, look." She pointed at a half-mannequin in the corner, wearing a sturdy, fur-lined cloak in deep gray, the edges reinforced with heavier leather. "That screams brooding hunter with a secret, and tell me that isn't your whole thing." He didn't deny it. Inside, the shop was warm and smelled faintly of wool, leather, and some kind of floral soap. Bolts of cloth lined the walls, and finished garments hung from iron hooks. A man with pinched spectacles and an impressive mustache looked up from his workbench. "Travelers," he said, appraising them in a glance. "You're either here because you tore what you had, or you're tired of smelling like you own it." "A little of both," Izzy said cheerfully. "We need something that won't fall apart on a mountain and doesn't make people cross the street when we walk by." The tailor's gaze slid to Sirius's shirt, stained, torn at the shoulder, mended twice already by someone with more enthusiasm than skill. I can see why. Sirius looked unbothered. We'll need sturdy leathers and a cloak. For her, he tipped his head toward Izzy, and for me. And. He paused, then added, something for a third. About her height, he gestured roughly, lighter build. Moves a lot. I can pick for her, Izzy cut in quickly, grabbing the opening like a gift. If we don't bring anything back for Priscilla, she'll pretend not to mind and then stare at us in a way that makes me feel like I've kicked a puppy. Sirius's mouth twitched. Exactly. The tailor nodded, rubbing his hands together. Coin? Sirius set the same small purse from the inn on the counter. That was answer enough. What followed unfolded in layers. For Sirius, they picked from the practical first. A new shirt in a deep moss gray, close-fitted but allowing movement, with reinforced stitching along the seams. Over it, a dark leather jerkin, cut high enough at the shoulders that his sword arm would never catch, the sides laced for easy adjustment. A pair of black, travel-worn trousers replaced his torn ones, and finally the cloak. Thick, heavy wool dyed charcoal, with a collar trimmed in pale fur that brushed his jaw when he fastened it. Izzy circled him as he tried the set on, one finger to her lips, pretending to judge while actually just staring. You look like you're about to disappear into a forest and never write home, she said. I approve. Good, he replied, tugging the cloak to test the weight. Writing home would be complicated. He said it lightly, but she caught the shadow behind it, filed it away. For herself, she gravitated toward the leathers almost without thinking. She found a fitted, dark red leather vest with subtle embossing along the edges, not decorative enough to catch the eye at a distance, but pretty when close. Beneath it, she chose a soft, off-white shirt with sleeves that could be tied back or rolled, a wide belt with hidden loops for knives, fitted black trousers reinforced at the knees, and new boots, ankle-high, supple, with good tread and enough room for a blade or two. When she stepped out from behind the screen, tugging at a sleeve, Sirius looked up from adjusting a buckle. He took her in, quietly, the way the vest hugged her frame, how the leathers let her move like she wanted to. Fast, light, dangerous without screaming for attention. Well? She demanded, throwing her arms out. Do I look like someone who could rob you blind and then talk you into thanking me for it? Sure, he said, completely earnest. She laughed, unable to help it. See, you can compliment people. I'm agreeing with your self-assessment, he replied. But there was the smallest spark in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Priscilla's outfit was next, chosen in absentia but somehow not. Izzy prowled the racks with a kind of focused delight, pulling out options and discarding them just as quickly. She needs something she can move in, she murmured, half to herself. Lots of spin. Tail room. Tail room? The tailor repeated, baffled. Trust me, Izzy said. You'll thank me when your hem doesn't get ripped off. They settled on a two-piece ensemble, a fitted, sleeveless top in a dusky blue that would complement Priscilla's scales, with a line of tiny silver studs along the neckline like scattered stars. For the bottom, a layered skirt, long enough to brush her ankles but cut in panels that would flare and part when she turned, revealing loose, fitted shorts beneath so she could kick and spin without worrying. A thin, chiming belt of small metal discs that would ring softly when she moved, like distant bells. Sirius watched Izzy make the choices, eyes softening imperceptibly. She'll like that, he said. Izzy grinned. I know. She might even say more than 3 words. Ambitious, he replied, but there was warmth in it. They worked through gloves, belts, small things that mattered more on the road than anyone wanted to admit. Izzy flirted in her usual way, lightly, half joke, half truth, a brush of fingers when she passed him a belt, a comment about how the cloak made his shoulders look very rescue-a-maiden, said with a teasing lilt. Each time it either sailed over his head or he deflected it with dry humor. You know, she said at one point, watching him adjust the clasp of his cloak in the mirror, if you keep dressing like this, people are going to start writing ballads. Mysterious hunter, tragic past, great hair, it's a lot. I don't hear an actual problem, he said. The problem, she replied, is that some poor heart is going to get absolutely crushed when you just stare at them and hand them a map instead. He shot her a sidelong look. I don't hand people maps. Exactly my point. She was half joking. Mostly. They were nearly finished when she found it, tucked on a back rail, half hidden behind more modest pieces. A dress, if one could call it that. Dark, soft fabric that clung rather than draped, cut low at the back and laced at the sides, with a skirt that fell to mid-thigh and uneven, jagged edges. There was nothing practical about it whatsoever. It was trouble, sewn. Izzy plucked it from the rack, grinning. Absolutely not for the mountain. The tailor looked mildly horrified. That is not for climbing anything. Exactly, she said. Then she glanced at Sirius, mischief flaring. Stay there. He frowned as she slipped behind the changing screen again. "Izzy, you said I could pick anything," she called back. "I'm just considering options." He sighed, but he stayed where he was, arms folded, cloak pulled around him. When she stepped out again, the words caught in his throat. The dress fit her like it had been waiting for someone with her exact shape. Tight where it could be, loose where it needed movement, the jagged hem showing more leg than she usually did, the side lacing exposing slivers of skin when she moved. Her hair was a little mussed from pulling it over her head, cheeks slightly flushed from the effort and the knowledge of exactly what she was doing. She posed exaggeratedly, one hand on her hip. "Too much?" she asked, clearly intending it to be a joke, a little weaponized vanity to get a rise out of him. For a moment, Sirius didn't see her. He saw someone else, a flicker of memory that came in with cruel, absolute clarity. Elise, standing in a doorway in another city, in another lifetime. A different dress, a different world, but something in the way Izzy held herself, the tilt of her chin, the curve of a smile she tried to make careless, hit that old wound with perfect aim. Elise, laughing as she spun in candlelight. Elise, leaning into him, warm and alive. The shop, the tailor, the years between, all of it fell away for a heartbeat. His chest tightened, a shock of grief and something like fear punching straight through him. He started, and the word came out rougher than he meant. He crossed the space between them without thinking, body moving before his mind could catch up. One arm came around her, drawing her in against him in a warm, solid embrace. Izzy sucked in a breath, the joke dying on her tongue. Her face pressed against his shoulder, his cloak cool beneath her cheek and his heartbeat firm under her ear. For a moment she didn't do anything at all, too startled to remember how to be clever. She could feel how tightly he held her, not crushing, not desperate, but firm, like someone clinging to something real in a room that had started to spin. Then he froze. The present slammed back in the shop, the tailor, the smell of leather and soap, Izzy in his arms instead of a ghost. He loosened his grip fractionally, muscles locking as if he'd just realized he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Izzy's brain scrambled to catch up. Heat flooded her face, her heart went from steady to sprint in a single beat. She'd wanted a reaction, yes, but this… She swallowed, then forced her voice to work, leaning into the only shield she knew. Humor. "Well," she said, slightly breathless, "if I'd known this was all it took to get a hug, I would have stolen something scandalous a lot sooner." The sound of her voice, light, familiar, hers, knocked something back into place in him. He let go, stepping back half a pace. The softness vanished from his face so quickly it almost hurt to watch. The old, careful stone settled back in over his expression. "It's distracting," he said evenly, as if the last few seconds hadn't happened. "You can't fight in that." Her stomach dipped at the way he shut it away, but she managed a crooked smile. "Who said anything about fighting? I wasn't planning on wearing it to wrestle a mountain." The tailor, who had been pointedly pretending to rearrange folded shirts with the intensity of a man who did not get paid enough for this, cleared his throat. "It is not ideal for travel, no." Izzy turned in front of the mirror once more, seeing not just herself but the echo of whatever he'd seen. "Yeah," she said softly. "Maybe not." She disappeared behind the screen again, the curtain swaying. Sirius exhaled, steadying himself. When she emerged a minute later, back in the sensible leathers they'd chosen, he looked at her the way he always did. Calm, measuring, with just the barest hint of warmth at the edges, but the distance between them had shifted by a hair. A thread tugged a little tighter. He picked up the folded dress from where she'd left it on the bench and set it aside with the other chosen garments. "We'll take that too," he told the tailor. Izzy blinked. "I thought… Not for the mountain," he said, "but roads end in other places eventually." It was a small admission, a future tense, spoken aloud. She smiled then, something softer and a little shy slipping through the usual bravado. "All right, Hunter, I'll hold you to that." They left the tailor with their arms a little fuller and their pockets a little lighter. The dress was wrapped carefully in brown paper and string, tucked under Izzy's arm. Sirius carried the rest in a neat bundle, as if weight didn't bother him. The city was busier now, midday crowds thickening the streets. Hawkers called, carts rattled, a dog barked lazily at a chicken that was absolutely over it. Somewhere, a bell tolled the hour, the sound rolling over the tiled roofs. "Food," Izzy declared, as if making a sacred vow, "before I start chewing on leather straps." They picked up lunch from a street vendor who'd set up beneath a faded blue awning, flatbread folded around spiced meat and onions, wrapped in paper that immediately bled with grease. Izzy snagged an extra one with a grin, the vendor throwing in a handful of pickled peppers for the pretty elf and her grim friend. "See?" Izzy said as they walked away. Tragic. Brooding gets you discounts. I paid full price, Sirius replied. Details. They wandered until the streets thinned and the noise dulled, finding a small sloping square where a lone tree grew from a crack in the stone. Its branches spread a thin canopy of leaves overhead, offering just enough shade to soften the light. A low, crumbling wall circled its roots, worn smooth where people had sat for years. Izzy hopped up onto the wall and let her feet dangle. Perfect, she said. Sirius handed her one of the folded breads, then sat beside her, a little distance between them, cloak pooling around his boots. For a few blessed minutes, the only sound between them was the rustle of paper and the quiet, appreciative noises of people who were hungrier than they'd admitted. She was halfway through her food when he wiped his fingers on the paper, set the last bite aside, and stood. I'll be back in a moment, he said. She swallowed, looking up. If you're going to disappear dramatically, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to wait until I blink, his mouth twitched. Just stay put, Izzy. Fine, she said, waving him off with her bread. Abandon me. If I get recruited into a street performance, I'll drag you into it when you come back. He left with that measured, unhurried walk of his, vanishing around the corner of a narrow lane. She stared after him for a moment, then leaned back against the trunk, closing her eyes. The memory of the embrace rose up as soon as the world went dim. The smell of leather and soap, the solid weight of his arm around her, the way his heartbeat had thundered for that one stunned second under her ear. She'd wanted to fluster him, yes, but not like that. There had been something raw in it, something that felt like it had nothing to do with her at all and everything to do with someone who wasn't there. Still, he'd come back to himself with her voice. Izzy huffed a breath and took another bite, chewing on food and thoughts both. The tree's leaves rustled overhead, casting shifting shadows across her face. Footsteps approached. She opened one eye. Sirius returned with 2 bottles in hand, one slim and green, the other shorter and darker. He held them up like evidence. For the lady, he said, offering her the green one, and for me. Izzy took it, reading the label. You got me proper wine? In daylight? Who are you, and what have you done with Sirius? I've seen you drink worse before noon, he said. Consider it. Controlled conditions. She laughed and popped the cork with a soft twist, taking a cautious sip. Not bad, a bit tart, like me. He settled back down beside her, uncorked his own bottle, and took a pull of rum, the familiar burn smoothing some invisible edge. For a while, they let the quiet stretch. The square was peaceful enough, an old woman dozing on a bench across the way, a pair of children chasing each other around the edge of a fountain, a stray cat slinking through a shaft of light. How are your wounds? Izzy asked eventually, breaking the soft rhythm. Her tone was light, but the question wasn't. Sirius's bottle paused halfway back to his lips. They were gone, of course. Nothing left but a faint ache his mind supplied out of habit. Skin smooth where an arrow had punched through, where a knife had dug deep. He'd checked that morning, fingers pressing for tenderness that wasn't there. I'm fine, he said. I'm holding up. Holding up, she echoed. That's not comforting, you know. He glanced over at her. I'm not dying, Izzy. You don't have to worry so much. Too late, she said. That ship sailed somewhere between the tree and the arrow. She took another sip of wine, then frowned at him. Show me. He blinked. Show me, she repeated. Your wounds. I want to see. Make sure it's not festering or doing whatever wounds do when people insist they're fine. He hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth before he could stop it. Trying to get me undressed in public, are you? She choked on her wine, spluttering. Serious? A couple walking past glanced over. Izzy waved them off, cheeks flushing. He looked faintly surprised at himself, then shook his head. Damn, I've been traveling with you and Kaylin too long, he said. She stared at him, then started to laugh, real, bright, bubbling up from somewhere that had been tight and knotted since the forest. Gods, you finally made a joke and it was about you undressing. I am so proud and so upset. He took a slow sip of rum, looking at her over the rim. The small smile stayed this time, settled into the lines of his face like it had always belonged there but rarely visited. The wound is closed, he said, a little more gently. Truly, I've seen worse. I've had worse. That's the problem, she muttered, but there was less fear in it now. You keep saying that like it makes the rest of us feel better. It's meant to make you feel better, he said. She glanced sideways at him, a little warmth curling behind her ribs at the way he said it. It sort of works. Annoyingly. They fell into a softer silence after that, passing the bottles back and forth sometimes, talking about nothing heavy, how ridiculous some of the pilgrim charms had looked, what she'd do to Kalen if he burned their dinner again, the strange names people gave their horses around here. Above them, the mountain watched over the city. Between its shadow and the trees, two battle-worn travelers sat shoulder to shoulder on a low wall, trading small jokes and shared drinks, pretending, for a little while, that they were just that, and nothing more complicated. Sirius tilted his head back, looking up at the sky, judging the sun's position, counting nights out of habit. Izzy watched him out of the corner of her eye, and when he caught her, she didn't look away. "Don't," he said quietly, though there was no real force behind it. "Don't what?" she asked. "Worry yourself over me," he said. "I'm harder to get rid of than that." She huffed. "Good," she said softly. "I'm not done annoying you yet." He didn't answer, but the small, quiet smile that tugged at his mouth when he looked away said enough. They returned to the silver switchback with parcels under their arms and a little more ease in their step, like the city had rubbed some road dust off their edges. Up in the big room, Kalen was already making use of the fireplace like it owed him rent. He had the window cracked for smoke, a pot warming, and a cutting board commandeered from somewhere downstairs. Priscilla sat beside him on the floor with her knees tucked up, watching with quiet intensity as if cooking were a kind of spell work. Every so often the tip of her tail flicked. Then, when Kalen handed her a bundle of herbs to strip, it started wagging in a slow, content rhythm that made her look almost puppy-like, despite the spear tip and the faint gleam of scale at her collar. Izzy swept into the room like a performer returning to the stage. "All right," she announced, dropping her bundle onto a bed with a flourish. "Witness me, Kalen. I am now significantly harder to kill and mildly more fashionable." Kalen looked up, squinting as she pulled on the new leathers, the fitted vest, the reinforced trousers, the boots that actually looked like they belonged to someone who fought for a living rather than survived by accident. Izzy posed, hands on hips, chin lifted, entirely too pleased with herself. Kalen's mouth twitched. "You look like you're about to steal something important." "Thank you," she said, beaming. "That's the goal." "Holding up," she echoed. "That's not comforting, you know." He glanced over at her. "I'm not dying, Izzy. You don't have to worry so much." "Too late," she said. "That ship sailed somewhere between the tree and the arrow." She took another sip of wine, then frowned at him. "Show me." He blinked. "Hmm?" "Show me," she repeated. "Your wounds. I want to see. Make sure it's not festering or doing whatever wounds do when people insist they're fine." He hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth before he could stop it. "Trying to get me undressed in public, are you?" She choked on her wine, spluttering. "Serious?" A couple walking past glanced over. Izzy waved them off, cheeks flushing. He looked faintly surprised at himself, then shook his head. "Damn, I've been traveling with you and Kalen too long," he said. She stared at him, then started to laugh, real, bright, bubbling up from somewhere that had been tight and knotted since the forest. "Gods, you finally made a joke and it was about you undressing. I am so proud and so upset." He took a slow sip of rum, looking at her over the rim. The small smile stayed this time, settled into the lines of his face like it had always belonged there but rarely visited. "The wound is closed," he said, a little more gently. "Truly, I've seen worse. I've had worse." "That's the problem," she muttered, but there was less fear in it now. "You keep saying that like it makes the rest of us feel better." "It's meant to make you feel better," he said. She glanced sideways at him, a little warmth curling behind her ribs at the way he said it. "It sort of works." Annoyingly. They fell into a softer silence after that, passing the bottles back and forth sometimes, talking about nothing heavy, how ridiculous some of the pilgrim charms had looked, what she'd do to Kalen if he burned their dinner again, the strange names people gave their horses around here. Above them, the mountain watched over the city. Between its shadow and the trees, two battle-worn travelers sat shoulder to shoulder on a low wall, trading small jokes and shared drinks, pretending, for a little while, that they were just that, and nothing more complicated. Sirius tilted his head back, looking up at the sky, judging the sun's position, counting nights out of habit. Izzy watched him out of the corner of her eye, and when he caught her, she didn't look away. "Don't," he said quietly, though there was no real force behind it. "Don't what?" she asked. Worry yourself over me, he said. I'm harder to get rid of than that. She huffed. Good, she said softly. I'm not done annoying you yet. He didn't answer, but the small, quiet smile that tugged at his mouth when he looked away said enough. They returned to the silver switchback with parcels under their arms and a little more ease in their step, like the city had rubbed some road dust off their edges. Up in the big room, Kalen was already making use of the fireplace like it owed him rent. He had the window cracked for smoke, a pot warming, and a cutting board commandeered from somewhere downstairs. Priscilla sat beside him on the floor with her knees tucked up, watching with quiet intensity as if cooking were a kind of spell work. Every so often, the tip of her tail flicked. Then, when Kalen handed her a bundle of herbs to strip, it started wagging in a slow, content rhythm that made her look almost puppy-like, despite the spear tip and the faint gleam of scale at her collar. Izzy swept into the room like a performer returning to the stage. All right, she announced, dropping her bundle onto a bed with a flourish. Witness me, Kalen. I am now significantly harder to kill and mildly more fashionable. Kalen looked up, squinting as she pulled on the new leathers, the fitted vest, the reinforced trousers, the boots that actually looked like they belonged to someone who fought for a living rather than survived by accident. Izzy posed, hands on hips, chin lifted, entirely too pleased with herself. Kalen's mouth twitched. You look like you're about to steal something important. Thank you, she said, beaming. That's the goal. Sirius didn't comment. He just set his bundle down with care and unwrapped the third parcel last, the one Izzy had insisted on tying herself. He held it out to Priscilla without ceremony, but his eyes stayed on her face. For you, he said simply. Priscilla blinked. Then her expression changed so fast it almost didn't feel real. Eyes brightening, lips parting in surprise. She took the parcel like it was fragile, like it might vanish if she moved too quickly. When she unfolded the fabric, the dusky blue top, the layered skirt with room to move, the little chiming belt, something almost childlike flickered across her face. Pretty, she breathed, then looked up at Sirius with open, startled warmth. Before anyone could tease her, she surged forward and hugged him. It was quick and tight and earnest, arms around his middle, cheek pressed briefly against his ribs like she was anchoring herself to something solid. Sirius stiffened on instinct, then relaxed, one hand lifting awkwardly as if he wasn't sure what to do with it, finally settling on her shoulder. Priscilla pulled back, still glowing, and pointed at his new cloak with a small, approving nod. Hunter, she said. Then, after a beat, added, better than last. Kalen made a sound like he was choking on laughter. Izzy's grin turned wicked. Oh, Izzy purred. Priscilla approves. Sirius, you're officially fashionable. Sirius cleared his throat, as if that made the moment less intimate. Try it on, he told Priscilla, voice steady again. She nodded quickly, clutching the fabric to her chest, and padded toward her bed. Her tail gave one more pleased little wag as she went. Izzy, abruptly tired in the way adrenaline always left her, flopped backward onto one of the beds with a dramatic sigh. I'm never taking these boots off, she declared into the ceiling. If I die, bury me in them. Kalen tossed a rag at her. If you die, I'm not carrying you anywhere. You'll be buried where you drop. Priscilla returned to sit beside him again a few minutes later, half-dressed already, hair slightly mussed, the new top fitting her like it had been made for movement. She didn't say much, but she stayed close, helping with small tasks, her presence warm and quiet. Kalen's cooking turned into something real. Chopped vegetables, sizzling meat, the sharp bite of spice in the air. Sirius watched it all for a moment. Izzy lounging and smiling with her eyes half closed, Kalen pretending he wasn't softened by Priscilla's attention. Priscilla hovering close with that subtle new confidence in her posture. Then he shifted, the restless part of him waking. I'll be back, he said. Izzy opened one eye. If you get stabbed again, I'm going to haunt you. He ignored that on principle and headed for the door. I'll bring something up, he added, already halfway out. Downstairs, the inn was louder, voices overlapping, cups thudding, laughter too sharp in places where it was trying to cover fear. The common room smelled of smoke and spilled ale and damp wool. Sirius moved through it like a shadow that didn't belong to the firelight, took a seat at the bar, and ordered rum. The first swallow burned clean, familiar, reliable. He let the noise wash over him while he stared at the bottle like it might offer answers if he looked hard enough. He'd been forcing stillness for days, forcing weakness, forcing patience. Now that the road was about to pull them forward again, the old ache returned with sharper teeth. Another drink. The bartender slid the glass back toward him without comment. A man stumbled up beside Sirius to order, travel-worn, hair too clean to be poor but too messy to be respectable. He looked like someone trying to hold himself together with sarcasm and drink. He leaned on the bar, swayed, then slipped, catching himself with an unsteady hand on Sirius's shoulder. Sirius turned his head slowly. The man blinked down at the hand like it had betrayed him, then looked at Sirius, already irritated at being witnessed. "Sorry," he slurred, but it wasn't an apology so much as a warning that he'd decided to be in a bad mood. Sirius said nothing. Silence, unfortunately, was the wrong answer for a man looking for a fight. The stranger's eyes narrowed. "What?" he demanded. "You got something to fucking say?" Sirius took a slow sip of rum, then set the glass down with deliberate care. His voice came flat. "Try standing on your own." It wasn't even harsh, it was just serious. The stranger's face flushed. "Oh, fuck you." Sirius's gaze didn't change. "You already are," he said mildly. "You're just doing it poorly. That did it." The man's jaw tightened, anger flashing brighter than sense. He reached out, not for a weapon, not for a fist, just petty, mean. He knocked Sirius's drink over, hard enough that the glass toppled and the rum spilled across the bar and down Sirius's sleeve in a warm, stinging rush. A hush snagged the air for the briefest moment, like the room collectively leaned in. The man smirked, fake sincere as he stepped back. "Fucking sorry, lad." He turned as if to walk away. Sirius's hand twitched. For a heartbeat, he was already reaching, already imagining the clean, efficient motion of steel and consequence. The weight of the dagger at his hip seemed to pulse with invitation. His jaw clenched, and something dark flickered behind his eyes. Then he exhaled. Not here. Not over this. Not with the mountain waiting and the moon counting days. He let his hand fall back to the bar. He wiped the rum off his sleeve with a slow, irritated motion and motioned for the bartender again. "Another," he said. The bartender slid him a fresh glass like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sirius took a sip. And that was when a voice, rasped by smoke or laughter or age, cut through the noise with intimate familiarity. "Drinking again, lover?" An arm looped around his shoulders from behind, warm and possessive. Something long and sinuous, smooth and unmistakably not human, curled around his waist, tightening just enough to be felt through cloth. Sirius went still. The woman leaned in close as if she'd always belonged there, as if the space beside him had been reserved. The room's noise seemed to fade at the edges, and the tail around him flexed, claiming. Sirius didn't move at first. He simply turned his head, slow, the way a predator does when it realizes the thing behind it isn't a drunk looking for company. It's something that already knows his name. The woman leaned in under her hood, close enough that the edge of the fabric shadowed most of her face, but not all of it. A sliver of skin showed at her jaw and cheekbone, purple, rich and unnatural, like twilight bruised into flesh. Strands of hair slipped free from the hood, black at the roots, bleeding into a dark red so deep it looked like jammed wine when the lantern light caught it. Her eyes were worse. Black as mirrors, bottomless and reflective, each one split by a piercing iris the color of violent amethyst. Bright and unfriendly, sharp and always watching. Tight leathers hugged her frame, fitted for movement more than modesty. High collar, cinched waist, bracers worn and scarred, and a belt set with small, quiet weapons that didn't jingle when she breathed. Everything about her was built for shadows and close distances. Even her scent was wrong for an inn. Smoke and spice, something floral that had rotted into sweetness. Her arm stayed looped around his shoulders as if she owned the space. Her tail, smooth, muscular, remained wrapped around his waist, a lazy coil that could become a noose in a blink. Sirius met her gaze without flinching. His voice came low and flat. "What do you want, Nix?" Her mouth curved faintly beneath the hood. "Straight to it, love," she murmured, rasp like gravel rubbed smooth. "No hello? No missed you?" Sirius didn't answer. Nix clicked her tongue, as if mildly disappointed by his predictability. "I'm checking in on my sources," she said lightly, like she was asking about the weather. "And I'm wondering..." Her eyes flicked down to the glass in his hand, then back to his face. "Why you're playing with Celine's pets." The words landed with a soft thud in the space between them. Sirius hesitated just a breath, then lifted the rum and took a slow sip. The burn did nothing to ease the pressure behind his eyes. It did give him time. "Don't worry about it," he said. Nix's tail tightened around him just enough to remind him she could. "Worry is a habit," she purred. "Especially when it's my leverage walking around in torn clothing and distasteful company." Sirius's jaw set. He didn't look away from her eyes. Nix slid her free hand into her cloak and produced an empty flask. She held it up between them, turning it so he could see the dried ring at the bottom, old residue, long gone. "Don't forget our deal," she said softly. Sirius's fingers tightened around his glass. He took another sip, measured and controlled, as though he could drink his way through her implications without giving her the satisfaction of reaction. Nix watched him with that predatory patience only truly dangerous people had. Then, as if remembering something amusing, she added, "Also, Celine has 2 other pets moving toward the mountain. Different set. They'll be climbing soon." Her gaze sharpened. "Keep your eyes open." Sirius's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. Nix smiled wider. "I'd prefer my pawns get the piece," she said, voice almost tender, "not her little rats." "I'll handle it," Sirius replied. Nix hummed, pleased. "Good." Her arm around his shoulders tightened and she pulled him a fraction closer, like a lover closing distance, or a knife finding a rib. That was when the drunk from before returned. He swayed up to the bar with all the grace of a falling chair, eyes bright with spite and liquor. He leaned in, too close, and his hand landed boldly on Nix's backside, fingers squeezing as if she belonged to him. "Now there's a sight," he slurred, trying to tug her away from Sirius. "Come on." Nix didn't even look at his hand, her tail moved. It snapped off Sirius like a released coil and wrapped around the man's waist in a single smooth motion. Before he could take a second breath, the tail yanked him in, hard, dragging him chest to chest with her, his stumble turning into a helpless lurch. His grin faltered. Nix's other hand appeared from her sleeve with a small dagger, so thin and dark it almost vanished against the inn's shadows. She pressed it to the soft place beneath his jaw, just enough to cut, enough to promise. The drunk's eyes widened as sobriety crashed into him like cold water. "The fuck?" he rasped, throat tight against the blade. Nix tilted her head, almost curious. Then she leaned in, lips close to his ear, voice a private whisper wrapped in silk. "Corin," she said gently, his name spoken like a key turning in a lock. Sirius's eyes narrowed a fraction at the sound. Nix continued, sweet as poison, "Don't make me report to Celine that I had to put down one of her rats." Her smile touched her voice. "I'd hate to hurt her feelings." The dagger shifted, barely, just enough to kiss his skin. A thin, bright line bloomed at Corin's neck. He sucked in a sharp breath, all arrogance gone, replaced by raw, trembling anger that had nowhere safe to go. "Hells," he spat, voice shaking. "Fucking bitch." Nix's tail loosened, releasing him like she'd grown bored. Corin stumbled back, a hand clamped to his neck. He didn't look at Sirius again, not once. He shoved his way through the room and out the door, leaving a smear of red on his fingers and a wake of uneasy silence behind him. Nix watched him go. Then she turned her mirrored eyes back to Sirius. For a moment, her arm was still around his shoulders, her presence warm and wrong and familiar all at once. She gave him a small smirk, sharp, satisfied, like she'd just reminded him exactly what kind of world he was really in. "Be careful," she murmured, not sounding like she meant it kindly. Then her shadow peeled away from the bar. One step and she was already slipping between bodies and lamplight, hood low, tail trailing like a whispered threat. The inn door opened, cold night air rushed in, then she was gone into the street beyond, swallowed by Threshold's darkness as if she'd never been there at all. Sirius sat very still for a long moment, his rum remained untouched. Then he lifted the glass and drank, eyes fixed on the door long after it closed. Sirius let the last swallow of rum sit in his throat like a stone. He didn't chase Nix outside. He didn't look for Corin. He didn't do anything reckless, no matter how hard some part of him wanted to, if only to feel something clean and simple like pain. Instead, he did what he always did when the world threatened to tip him back into the dark. He made himself useful. He ordered 2 more bottles, 1 ale, 1 wine, and a third of rum for good measure, ignoring the bartender's raised brow. Coin slid across the counter. Glass clinked softly as the bottles were wrapped in rough cloth and handed over. Sirius took them, nodded once, and left the noise behind. Up the stairs, the inn's air changed with every step. Less smoke, less sweat, more quiet. His boots were soundless on the worn wood. The hall was dim, lit by a single lantern that made the doorways look like waiting mouths. He stopped outside their room, just for a moment. He could already smell the food, real food, not tavern slop. Roasted spices and rendered fat, the sharp bite of garlic, something sweet simmering down. And beneath it, the warmth of a fire and the faintest trace of Priscilla's presence. Clean air and smoke and something wild like storm-soaked earth. Sirius exhaled, steadying his face into something neutral. Then he opened the door. Heat and sound hit him at once. Kalen stood at the hearth with his sleeves rolled up, face flushed from cooking, looking annoyingly pleased with himself. Priscilla sat cross-legged beside him on the floor, passing ingredients and tasting with careful seriousness, her new top catching the firelight in dusky blue. Her tail flicked once behind her, then wagged when Kalen handed her something to stir, as if she couldn't help it. Izzy lounged on one of the beds, boots kicked off, hair half loose, lazily tossing a dagger up into the air and catching it by the hilt without looking. The blade flashed once in the firelight, a silver wink. Kalen looked over his shoulder as Sirius stepped in. "You're just in time," he said, already reaching for bowls. "Sit. Eat." Sirius didn't answer. He set the bottles down on the table with a soft clink and slid into a chair like his body had never known tension at all. Izzy caught her dagger and pointed it at him like a rude little greeting. "So," she said, grin teasing, "how'd your grand adventure to seize more booze go? Did you have to stab anyone, or was it a peaceful heist?" "No stabbing," Sirius said. His voice was even, but his eyes were a touch darker than before. "I ran into someone." Kalen paused mid-ladle. Priscilla's head tilted, attention sharpening. Izzy sat up a little. "Someone like a cute stranger who flirted with you, because I would pay coin to see that." Sirius ignored the bait. "One of Celine's hounds," he said. The room shifted. Not silence, Kalen's fire still crackled, the stew still bubbled, but something tightened in the air, like a string drawn taut. Izzy's smile faded slowly. "Which one?" "Corin," I heard someone say. Sirius said. "He didn't recognize me. It looked like the one from the springs. Wolf hunt." That was true enough, in the way that mattered. He reached for one of the bottles and began to uncork it with practiced calm. He was at the inn, drunk, loud, looking for a fight. Kalen's jaw clenched. "And you didn't kill him?" Sirius's mouth twitched faintly, humor without warmth. "No, we can use it to our advantage." Izzy frowned, working it through. "If he doesn't know you, that means Celine's not getting full reports." "Not yet." "Seems so," Sirius said. He poured a small amount of ale into a cup and slid it toward Kalen, then set another cup near Izzy. "It means we can move through this city without them immediately locking onto us." Priscilla's fingers curled slightly in her lap. "Careful," she murmured. Then, after a beat, added another word, quieter but firmer. "Always." Sirius met her eyes briefly, acknowledgement passing between them like a silent pact. "Yes." Kalen finished serving, setting bowls in front of them with more force than necessary. "Eat," he muttered. "Then we talk about plans." Quietly. "And if Celine's pets are sniffing around, we keep Priscilla close and you—" He pointed his spoon at Sirius. "Stop going downstairs alone." Sirius didn't argue. He probably should have, just to keep the illusion of control, but he didn't. Izzy took a bite of stew and closed her eyes in appreciation. "Kalen," she said reverently. "If we die on that mountain, I want my last thought to be this." Kalen scoffed, though the edge of tension in him eased a fraction. "You're dramatic." "I'm honest." Priscilla took small bites, quieter than the rest, but her eyes kept drifting from face to face, measuring the room, watching for cracks. She looked brighter in her new clothes, softer around the edges, but the dragon in her never truly slept. They tried to make the evening normal. They drank, Priscilla only water, as always, and ate until the bowls were scraped clean. Izzy told a ridiculous story about a merchant she'd once convinced she was a minor noble in exile, Kalen adding commentary and insisting she left out the part where she'd tripped and fallen into a fountain. Even Sirius offered a dry remark or two, the kind that almost made Izzy choke on her drink, but the looming threat stayed in the corners with the shadows. Celine's hounds were here. Somewhere in Threshold's streets, in its inns and markets, they moved like rot beneath paint, searching for the same thing the party had come for. The artifact of Phelan didn't care who bled for it. The mountain didn't care who prayed. And when the laughter faded and the dishes were pushed aside, the silence that followed was heavier than the quiet of a peaceful night. It was the quiet of a pause before the next turn of the blade. The food didn't just fill them, it softened them. Kaylin's stew was thick and dark, simmered down until the meat practically surrendered when your spoon touched it. He'd somehow found onions sweet enough to melt into the broth, roots that tasted like pepper and earth, and a handful of herbs that made the whole thing smell like something you ate in a safe home, not in a city shadowed by a cursed mountain. Bread followed, warm, torn apart by hand, soaked through with gravy until there was nothing left but crumbs and satisfied silence. Izzy drank wine like it was a dare. At first she was careful, little sips, a bright grin, teasing Kaylin for pouring his ale like a man who'd never known restraint. Then the second bottle opened and her laughter came easier, louder. She talked with her hands, sprawled across the bed with her new leathers creasing at the hips, cheeks flushed from heat and drink. Kaylin rolled his eyes and argued back, but even he was smiling more than he scowled. Sirius drank rum, slow and steady like a ritual. He didn't chase it, he didn't get loud, but the sharpest edges of him dulled just enough that he seemed present. Not just there, not just watching, but with them. A small, rare thing. Priscilla kept to water, her cup always refilled, her gaze quiet and bright. She watched them talk, watched Izzy grin with wine-sweet boldness and Kaylin lean into his own warmth, watched Sirius sit with his back to the wall like habit demanded and yet not leave. When the plates were cleared and the fire settled into a low, steady roar, Izzy clapped her hands once, too loud. "All right," she announced, swaying slightly. "Priscilla, show them." Kaylin's brow lifted. Show them what? Priscilla blinked, startled. For a moment she looked like she might retreat into one-word answers and silence. Then she glanced down at the new outfit folded neatly beside her, hesitated, and stood. The skirt moved like a secret. Even before she danced, it seemed made for motion. The layered panels swaying when she took a step, the small chiming discs along her belt giving a faint, delicate ring. The dusky blue top caught the firelight and threw it back soft, like moonlight on water. And when she shifted her weight, her tail, half hidden but not fully, flicked behind her with a shy sort of excitement. Izzy sat up on the bed, elbows on her knees, grinning wide. There she is. Priscilla took a breath. Then, with no music at all, no lute, no drum, she began. It was quieter than the dance in the town square, more private, like something she would only ever do where she felt safe. Her arms lifted slow, wrists turning, fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. Her hips followed, a gentle sway that turned into a step, then another. The skirt flared when she spun, panels fluttering open and closing, showing the fitted shorts beneath in quick flashes that felt more practical than provocative, meant for a body that could move and fight and fly when it had to. The chiming belt sang softly, little bells whispering with each turn. Priscilla's expression stayed calm, almost distant, but there was life in her eyes. Joy, held carefully in her chest like something fragile. She moved with a dancer's grace and a dragon's control, every motion balanced, precise, as if she could stop on a knife edge and not wobble. Kaylin went quiet. Not because he didn't have something to say, but because he couldn't find anything that wouldn't cheapen it. He watched her like he was seeing her anew, hands resting on his knees, firelight turning his face soft. Sirius watched too, gaze unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders eased. For once he didn't look like he was waiting for the world to turn on them, he just watched. When Priscilla finished, she didn't bow. She simply lowered her hands and stood still, breathing lightly. Izzy applauded first, loud and enthusiastic. Yes, yes, look at her! Kaylin's hands followed after a beat, slower but just as sincere. That, he said, voice rough, was damn good. Priscilla's cheeks pinked faintly. She ducked her head and murmured, "Thank you." 2 words, maybe 3 if you counted the breath. Izzy beamed like she'd won something. The warmth lingered after, the kind that clung to the room even as the hour grew late. The fire burned lower, the bottles emptied. The city noises downstairs faded into a dull, sleepy murmur. Eventually, the weight of travel and tension returned like it always did, settling into their limbs now that the laughter had nowhere else to prop them up. Priscilla curled down on the floor first, claiming the spot closest to the hearth as if it belonged to her by right. She pulled a blanket around her shoulders, tail tucked in close, eyes already drooping. Within minutes, her breathing evened, steady and soft, the fire painting her scales in faint, warm glints. Kaylin took one of the beds with a grunt, boots kicked off, one arm flung over his face. "Wake me if the inn catches fire," he muttered. Izzy, meanwhile, was buzzing. Wine had turned her thoughts into bright, reckless little sparks. Her cheeks were flushed, her smile too loose, her eyes half-lidded but still sharp enough to be dangerous. She swayed where she sat, bottle in hand, staring at the remaining bed like it was an idea. Sirius had already settled on his. Sitting upright with his back against the headboard, cloak tossed aside, shirt half unlaced at the collar. He looked like someone trying to rest without ever fully surrendering to it, one knee bent, forearm resting across it. Izzy stared at him for a long moment. Then, with the boldness only wine could give her, she stood, walked over, and climbed onto his bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sirius's eyes flicked to her, a silent question. He didn't move, he didn't tell her to get off. Izzy plopped down hard enough to jostle the mattress and kicked her boots up beside her, sprawled sideways across the covers, bottle still clutched loosely in her fingers. "Hi," she said, far too pleased with herself. Sirius's voice stayed quiet. "Hey." She blinked at him as if surprised he'd answered. "You're very bed-shaped," she informed him solemnly. Sirius exhaled through his nose. "You're very drunk." "I'm not drunk," she said immediately, indignantly, then squinted at the bottle. "Okay, maybe a little. But only the fun kind, not the sad crying kind." He didn't respond, just watched her with that calm, patient stare of his. Izzy tried to make conversation, as if she hadn't just invaded his space like a chaotic cat. "So," she said, voice softening, "tomorrow we wait again. And then the moon does the thing. And then we climb the horrible Death Mountain." "That's the plan," Sirius murmured. She nodded slowly, the bravado slipping as the wine faded into exhaustion. Her eyelids fluttered. She shifted closer without seeming to notice she was doing it, shoulder brushing his side. "You can't die," she said suddenly, slurring just enough to make it honest. Sirius stilled, just a fraction. Izzy blinked up at him. Not like on that mountain," she added, frowning as if trying to make her thoughts behave. If you did, I'd..." Her voice caught. She shook her head, annoyed with herself. "I'd miss you too much. So don't, okay?" She reached up and tapped his chest once with the hand holding the bottle, clumsy but gentle. Sirius's throat worked. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes did, something flickering then disappearing. "Izzy," he said quietly. But she was already sinking, her head tipped, resting against his shoulder as if it belonged there. Her body relaxed in a slow surrender, the wine finally dragging her down. She mumbled something incoherent, half complaint, half reassurance, then let out a soft little sigh. The bottle remained in her hand, angled precariously but somehow not spilling. Her fingers loosened around the neck but didn't let go. Sirius sat perfectly still. He didn't push her away, he didn't move her, he only looked down at her sleeping face, cheeks flushed, lashes resting against her skin. Lips parted slightly in the aftermath of too much wine and too much feeling. The fire cracked softly behind them. Across the room, Kaylin's breathing deepened. On the floor, Priscilla slept curled close to warmth, tail tucked in tight. And Sirius, immortal, exhausted, burdened with secrets, stayed awake with a sleeping elf against his shoulder, listening to the sound of her breathing like it was the only thing in the room that mattered. The night held them there, and the Death Mountain waited.
Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. More chapters are on the way.